Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Guardians of Hope podcast, where we bring together parents, nonprofits, legal, and medical experts dedicated to positively impacting children's lives. Before we begin, this content should not be used as legal or medical advice. The purpose of this podcast is to inform and unite. So please seek advice from your attorney or doctor to address your specific needs. The thoughts and opinions of my guests are not necessarily my own. This is a platform for sharing. This episode is focused on fentanyl poisoning in children. So, before we start, if this might trigger you or anyone who's listening around you, now is the time to turn this episode off. A recent study from Yale University examined the nation's fentanyl crisis among children. According to the study, in 1999, only 5% of opioid deaths in children were due to fentanyl. But in 2021, the drug was responsible for 94% of deaths. Pediatric deaths from fentanyl rose substantially in 2013. Around the same time, fentanyl deaths also trended upward for adults. Since 2013, pediatric deaths from fentanyl have risen 3,000%. The only thing worse about these stats is that these deaths are preventable. Joining me to discuss this is Brian Townsend, former DEA agent. Brian is the founder and principal of Eagle 6 Training, which provides speaking, training, and consulting services to both businesses and law enforcement entities around the world. Brian, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, hi, Cynthia. I'm happy to be here and look forward to this.
Excellent. So you spent 23 years with the DEA. Can you tell me a little bit about your work at the agency and how you're currently using that knowledge to raise awareness about fentanyl poisoning?
Yeah, I served 28 years in law enforcement, 23 with the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. 24 of my 28 years were in some type of enforcement capacity, so I know a lot about drug trafficking and how to work those investigations. I worked 10 years in Arkansas, about 7 in South Texas, 4 in Quantico, Virginia, at our training academy. And then the last 2 years, I was in Springfield, Missouri, as the resident agent in charge, which means I oversaw all DEA operations in 25 counties in Southwest Missouri. So in 2022, I retired from the DEA and I opened my own business, Eagle 6 Training. And I also work for the Midwest Organized Crime Information Center as a law enforcement training coordinator. And we serve law enforcement in 9 states. So although I'm not wearing a badge, I still happily work with law enforcement every day. And I've started to build different curriculum, based on my experience, 28 years, most of that time with DEA. And I developed a program for fentanyl. It's a 4-hour program. It's very comprehensive. And it's really like anything else offered. It was originally designed for law enforcement and other first responders, but it really expanded pretty quickly to a lot of other audiences: school teachers, administrators, medical professionals, health advocates, treatment recovery folks. Most of my presentations are now open to the public, but those are my typical audiences. So, the past 15 months, I've been to 11 different states, and I've given this presentation over 40 times, and it's been well received. And I think people are just eager for this information. It's very important, and I'm happy to spread the awareness.
Thanks, Brian. So I wanted to ask, why fentanyl? Why is it so widespread?
Well, quite simply, really, illicit fentanyl is just very addictive. I mean, that's as simple as answer I can give you. It's extremely addictive drug, and it creates customers for drug traffickers, and the cartels are making record profits from this. They took advantage of our legal opioid crisis back in the 2012, 2013 time period to push heroin, and then they put fentanyl in the heroin supply, and it's just taken off. I mean, I call fentanyl a game changer. Uh, you know, 24 of my 28 years in law enforcement were in some type of enforcement capacity, and never saw a drug more impactful. It's 50 times more powerful than heroin. It's a lot cheaper to make. It's fully synthetic, so you no longer need the plant. It's just all chemicals. And these pills cost the cartels just pennies to make. And they've just saturated the market, and it's an extremely addictive drug.
Tell me how children are exposed to fentanyl.
Most commonly through pills, Oxy, Adderall, Xanax, Percocet. I mean, you name it. Fentanyl's found its way into our drug supply. It's everywhere. Cocaine, meth, heroin, if you can find it, even marijuana, but that's pretty rare. Pills is the big way, especially for kids. If there's a counterfeit pill out there, there's a good chance it'll contain fentanyl.
Hmm. And they can find it anywhere, is what you're saying. Like it can be found, a child can get a hold of it anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all over our drug supply. I mean, nothing's immune from fentanyl. I mean, it has found its way into everything. Like I said, most commonly the pills when it comes to children, but because but it's still, I mean, cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin. I mean, that's heroin's how it originally came into the drug supply, was through the heroin, and then from there it's gotten to everything.
Huh. So let's talk a bit about why kids are more at risk or susceptible. The focus of this podcast is child advocacy. So I might want to bring it home for everyone who's listening. Why are they more susceptible to poisoning or overdose?
Sure, I think there's two reasons. First is the teenage years are typically when people experiment with drugs, and the second reason is they don't have the knowledge. They're not getting the information they need to make informed decisions. Only 2 milligrams of fentanyl is considered a lethal dose. I mean, 2 milligrams is maybe a few granules of salt or sand. And I don't know if you drink coffee or not, but your typical sugar packet is about about a gram. So a gram's 1,000 milligrams. So if 2 milligrams of fentanyl is a lethal dose, there would be 500 lethal doses in that one typical package of sugar. 500. And that's how little it takes to kill someone. And people just don't know that, especially our children. And like I said, the teenage years are critical for all types of experimentation. And statistically speaking, if people are going to experiment with drugs or alcohol, it's usually in their teenage years. And that hasn't changed from any generation. But what has changed is that, like I said earlier, fentanyl is in our drug supply. So now we have a drug that only 2 milligrams is enough to kill you, and it's made our way into everything. And kids are experimenting now with drugs, and they're dying from first time drug use. I mean, it is. I can't say it enough. It's a game changer. I've never seen a drug more impactful.
Hmm. And being that it's so potent and kids' bodies are much smaller than adults, right? That makes it 100 times worse, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I mean, they don't have the tolerance to it. Smaller bodies, yeah, absolutely. All those factors play into it, and it's devastating children.
Does Narcan or Narcan, am I saying that right, Brian?
Yeah,
Does that work in the
it
instance?
does.
Mm-hmm.
It does. It reverses. So what happens is when you take an opioid, it attaches itself to the opioid receptors, and that's what blocks or reduces the intensity of pain. So Narcan kicks that opioid off its receptor, and it blocks the opioid from doing what it does, because it doesn't take a lot of opioid, especially this illicit fentanyl, to uh, to kill you, to stop your breathing. I mean, your brain tells your heart, "Hey, I got this," and your heart slowly stops beating, and obviously you'll die. So Narcan, naloxone, is a medication that prevents that. It I hate to use the word reverse, but that kind of what it does. It stops the overdose, and it prevents the opioid from doing the damage that it was intending to do.
Got it. Thanks, Brian. And my last question is focused on schools and parents. How can we work together to address this problem and make it more preventable?
Education and awareness programs work, and there's a lot of programs. There's a lot of people out there like myself who are providing accurate information to kids, and just giving them good information, because they're going to get information somewhere, whether it's their friends, drug traffickers, social media. We got to give them real information, accurate information, and we got to let them know that there's risks and there's consequences for the things they do in life. And the other thing, parents can reinforce this, these messages. Engage with your children. Have open discussions about drugs. You don't need to be a DA agent to talk to kids. Be involved in their lives. Know who their friends are. Know who their influences are. Know if they're on social media. Know what kind of apps they're using. Just be engaged. Reinforce that positive message that, hey, only 2 milligrams of fentanyl is enough to kill you. Did you know that? And let's have that discussion. Be someone they can have hard conversations with.
This is great advice. And what about the little ones? When you and I first chatted about this topic, I told you I have a young son. He's 10, but a couple years ago, I had to have a real conversation with him about this because it was coming into schools looking like candy,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
how do we talk to little ones about this?
I think it's the same conversation, but it's just a little bit more age appropriate. So, the words, our vocabulary is going to be, you know, to a level that they're going to understand. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's the same conversation. I mean, we're talking about how deadly this drug is. I mean, the example I gave you with the sugar packet. I mean, I think a young child, even though he or she may not drink coffee, that's something they can visualize. Here's a packet of sugar, and this one little package is enough to kill 500 people. Just making it, again, having the conversation more age appropriate with the vocabulary and words that they can understand, and allowing them to ask you questions, and establishing that relationship where as they grow older and as they experience more of this of these negative influences in their life, that they know who they can go to get real accurate information.
Absolutely. Brian, thank you so much for your time and, sharing your experience and knowledge around this topic. If anyone wants to learn more about Brian's mission to raise awareness and foster a deeper understanding of the opioid epidemic and illicit fentanyl crisis, visit his website, only2mg.com. Brian, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. Appreciate it.